What if I told you that a baby who cannot yet speak, cannot yet walk, cannot yet understand a single word of the language being spoken around them, can nonetheless detect that something in their environment is wrong before any adult in the room has consciously registered it? That the tension in a voice, the specific chemical signature of fear in the air, the barely perceptible changes in a caregiver's breathing and muscle tone and movement quality are being received and processed and responded to by the baby's nervous system with a speed and a sensitivity that bypasses every layer of cognitive evaluation that an adult would apply, landing directly in the body as a physiological alarm that does not wait for permission from the thinking mind and does not require language to be understood. And that this capacity, this ancient and extraordinarily sensitive danger detection system that every baby is born with, is not a baby being difficult or overly sensitive or difficult to settle for no reason, but is one of the most sophisticated and the most consequential survival systems that the human genome has ever produced. A system so important to the survival of a helpless creature in an uncertain world that evolution hardwired it into the nervous system at the deepest possible level, running before birth, running at full capacity the moment a baby takes their first breath, and designed to remain alert to threat even during sleep. The answer to whether babies sense danger is yes, emphatically, neurologically, measurably yes. And the mechanism by which they do it, the specific biological machinery underneath this capacity, is something that tells you not just about babies, but about the fundamental architecture of the human threat detection system and the ways in which the oldest and fastest parts of our nervous system operate with a speed and a certainty that the newer thinking parts of our brains can almost never match. The biology at the center of this story is the amygdala, the threat detection nucleus deep in the brain that we have visited in earlier scripts. But what is specific and important here is not just that the amygdala exists and fires in response to threat. It is that the amygdala receives certain categories of threat-relevant information through what neuroscientists call a low road, a fast subcortical pathway that bypasses the cortex entirely and delivers the alarm signal to the body before the thinking brain has had any chance to evaluate whether the threat is real. A pathway so fast that the physiological fear response, the heart rate spike, the cortisol release, the muscle tension, the shift in breathing can be fully underway before conscious awareness has caught up, before the person can even form the thought that something feels wrong. In adults, this low-road response is familiar as the experience of startling before you know what startled you, of feeling afraid before you have identified what frightened you, of the body already in alarm while the mind is still asking what happened. And in babies whose cortex is not yet developed enough to mount the cognitive evaluation that would allow a conscious assessment of the threat, this low-road response is essentially the only road available, which means that a baby's entire experience of danger is subcortical, precognitive, purely physiological. They do not think their way to the conclusion that something is wrong. They feel it in the body before thought can intervene, with a directness and a totality that no adult nervous system achieves anymore. What this means in practice is that the baby who is suddenly distressed when a tense stranger enters the room, the baby who startles and cries when a voice in another room rises in anger, the baby who seems to know that something bad is happening before anyone has told them anything, is not being irrational or sensitive in some pejorative sense. They are running the most ancient and the most honest danger detection system their nervous system possesses, a system that is reading the threat cues in the environment accurately and responding to them appropriately, and the fact that the adults in the room have learned to explain away those same cues, to apply social courtesy or contextual reasoning to override the body's initial alarm, does not make the alarm wrong. It makes the adults more polite and sometimes less safe. Now, here is the first twist that reframes the baby's danger-sensing capacity in a way that is genuinely startling. Researchers studying infant responses to threat have found that babies respond not only to direct threats, to loud sounds, to sudden movements, to pain, but to the specific biochemical signature of fear in other people, to the chemical compounds released in human sweat during states of fear and high stress, and that this olfactory threat detection system is functional and responsive in newborns from the very first days of life. A finding that means a baby can detect that a caregiver is afraid through smell alone, in the dark, in the absence of any visual or auditory cues, through the oldest and most evolutionarily ancient sensory channel the human nervous system possesses. A channel that projects directly to the amygdala without any cortical detour, producing an immediate physiological alarm response in the baby that is triggered not by anything the baby can see or hear, but by what they can smell, which is the invisible chemical broadcast of another person's fear state, arriving at the baby's threat detection system through a pathway so ancient and so direct that it makes the whole elaborate architecture of conscious social perception look like a very late and very thin addition to a system that was already working with extraordinary efficiency long before any of it was built. This means that the baby is not just reading the emotional states of the people around them through the channels of face and voice and touch that we have discussed in other scripts. They are also reading them through smell, through the biochemical exhalations of the body, through the molecules that fear releases into the air and that the baby's olfactory system delivers directly to the alarm center of the brain without any intermediate processing, which gives the baby access to threat information that is not only faster than any cognitive evaluation, but that the source of the fear cannot hide or perform away because the chemistry of fear is not under voluntary control and does not respond to the social instruction to appear calm. Here is the second twist, and it is perhaps the most important thing a caregiver can understand about the baby's danger-sensing capacity. The most consequential threat that the baby's nervous system is designed to detect is not loud noises or sudden movements or any physical danger in the external environment. It is the threat of being alone, of being without the protective presence of an attachment figure, of being in a state of need without the resource of another regulated nervous system available to co-regulate with. And the alarm that the baby's threat detection system generates in response to this specific threat is among the most powerful and the most physiologically distressing alarms the baby produces, which is why separation from a primary caregiver generates a stress response in an infant that, if sustained, activates the same cortisol pathways as physical pain. Why the cry of a baby left alone has a specific acoustic quality, higher pitched, more urgent, more sustained, that is measurably distinct from other baby cries, and that triggers a stronger and more urgent response in adult caregivers who hear it. Why the nervous system of a baby who is consistently left without a responsive caregiver calibrates itself over time toward a baseline of higher threat vigilance and lower threshold for alarm that persists long past the infancy that produced it. This is the deepest and the most important form of danger that the baby's nervous system is detecting and responding to. And it is not a danger that comes from outside the relationship, but from within it, from the absence of the presence that the baby's biology has built itself to require, the absence of the other regulated nervous system that functions as the baby's external threat modulation system, the absence of the person whose calm voice and warm touch are the only things in the early months of life that can tell the baby's alarm system that it can stand down, that the danger, whatever it was, has passed. What all of this means, held in a single clear view, is that the baby who seems to sense danger is not mystically perceptive or preternaturally wise in some romantic and impractical way. They are running biological systems of threat detection that are, in their specific domains, more sensitive and more direct and less easily fooled than anything the adult thinking mind is capable of producing. Systems that evolved across millions of years in a world where the cost of missing a genuine threat was death and the cost of a false alarm was a moment of unnecessary distress, and that have therefore been calibrated by selection pressure toward maximum sensitivity, toward detecting every possible signal of threat rather than only the obvious and undeniable ones, toward erring always on the side of alarm because the consequences of missing a real danger are catastrophic and the consequences of a false alarm are merely uncomfortable. The baby is not wrong when they seem to sense danger in a room where nothing visibly threatening has occurred. They are reading a signal that is real, through channels that are ancient and accurate, with a nervous system that has not yet learned the adult habit of overriding what the body knows with what the mind prefers to believe. And in a world that is genuinely uncertain and genuinely sometimes dangerous, that direct, unfiltered, socially uncorrected sensitivity to threat is not a weakness, it is a gift. The oldest and most honest alarm system that evolution has ever installed in a human body, telling the truth about the environment with a clarity that the thinking mind, for all its sophistication, has never quite been able to match. Subscribe